So are you getting tired out? How many of you missed lunch? Stage round. Yeah, none of us really ate lunch. Troy keeps us working hard, right? How many of you feel like you're getting something out of this? That's great. I'm fascinated with it personally. I think it's gone really, really well. And if I were restarting my career in sports or early on in my career in sports, I wish I would have had something like this. I don't know about you guys, but I really wish I would have. So I'm glad you're here. Hopefully you're getting a lot out of it. I want to introduce some of the people on our panel. First of all, we have Kenny Dow. Kenny has one of those real interesting backgrounds. He was the assistant cheerleading coach and later now a head cheerleader coach, and he works 2 full-time jobs. Those that heard me this morning talk about it. He has 2 full-time jobs. You're having a hard time getting one, right? He has 2 full-time jobs. So he works morning till wee hours of the night. He is not only the head cheer and dance coach at the University of Washington, but he's also the senior director of marketing for the championship Seattle Storm. So he works both full-time. Next is Jacob Hanselman. And Jacob started out as an account executive with the Chicago Fire, to the senior director of ticket sales for the Colorado Rapids, and that's where he is now. And he leads season, group, premium soccer and inside sales. And he has really led sales teams to great numbers there. And he also develops the staff to go on to other careers in sports, so that they're actually not just having you in there selling, and it's kind of like a dead-end thing. He actually develops your career. Those are teams you need to look for that actually help develop and grow people. And he's very dedicated to moving his staff on to the next level. Next is Scott Fresnelli, and Scott started, he's got a great background. He started as an intern throwing out t-shirts at the Idaho Steelheads, and he worked his way up. He's definitely a story of what it's like to work your way up in sports. He's taken numerous positions. He's had a great career, and sometimes you think the fit is right only to find out that it's not. Either ownership is bad, culture is bad, but whatever is not the right fit. And you need to know that. You need to recognize it. You need to get out and move on to where you are successful. In doing so, and that's a strong strength to be able to recognize it. In doing so, he was able to find the right opportunities, and now he's vice president of ticket sales for the Las Vegas Lights FC. And on a funny note, I thought this was funny. He spent 3 months in Princeton, and he had to rent a room in the basement of a woman's house. So if he looks like he's bending over a lot, it's because the ceiling wasn't even 6 foot tall and he couldn't stand. So he spent, 3 months bending over in a house. He said it was like a slumber party. So he had to work in that environment. And then last down here we have Joe Rickson. 1 year in minor league baseball led him to realize that he was working with the least fun team in all of minor league baseball, and it was time to move on, which he did. He spent 6 years at Liberty University and then went on to Seton Hall. And he's had truly an opportunity to be part of 3 major football stadium renovations and a new baseball stadium opening, which is an awesome experience to have. And in his current role at Seton Hall, he is implementing tons of new ticketing strategies and is leading Seton Hall to a lot of success. So, and I guess I'll tell you who I am. I'm Kathy Burrows, and I worked for 8 years for the Cleveland Indians, and then left to start my own sports consulting, where I've been for the past 16 years, and I'm only 37, give or take a decade or two. So for the past 16 years, I've been working with sports teams all over the country, and my goal is really one. I work with sales teams to fill seats, but my goal is to truly develop the people that are sitting in those offices, because looking out right now, you are the future of sports. You are exactly what we need to continue to grow this sport. And the world has moved on, the world has changed. It's not 1980 anymore, and sports is kind of the last of the entertainment venues to move forward. So we're counting on you to learn as much as you can and take us all to new heights. And I know I take that personally, and you guys take that very personally also. So we're talking today about how to upping your career sports strategy. If you read a lot, everything is now strategy based. You've got to have a plan. It's kind of like a GPS. Like, how the heck do you know where you're going if you're shooting arrows all over the place, right? You got to have some kind of plan. So all of you are a staff member on your own, What does it mean to create a career strategy to you guys? What do you look for when you have staff? What does it mean to develop a career strategy?
Yeah, I can. So I think when you first get started in sports, you kind of have like this idea of what you want, what your end goal is. But then, like for me personally, I reevaluate that end goal like every 2 years, and it changes. For example, when I first got into college athletics back in 2006, I thought I'd be an athletic director someday, and now I know there's no way I ever want to be an athletic director because your lifespan's like 5 years, then you get fired. So now my goal is like to be number 2. And that way, there's always the fall guy, which is 80. So I think you can start with what you want. Do you want to work in college athletics? Do you want to work in professional sports? Do you want to be a high school AD? And kind of figure out where do you fit, and then get an internship somewhere in that realm. I always recommend people, like when we talked earlier today about, don't just go for the name brand or the logo, but try to find that place where you can develop your skill set and learn as many skills as possible, so you become more marketable to eventually land that big time job with a big time organization, or wherever the best fit for you will personally be.
Yeah, I think it's certainly helpful to have an end goal, but for many people in the room today, it's also about navigating the early part of your career and making sure that each and every opportunity you're going into, one, that there is an opportunity, two, there's a huge opportunity for you to learn, but most importantly, you're surrounded by the right people that have a track record of helping others continue to advance their career, because everybody in this room wants to have a career in sports, not a job in sports. So the most important job you're ever going to have is your first one that lines you up, puts you in the right opportunity, puts you in the right learning environment around the right people to help you continue to move up throughout your career. So I think each and every opportunity you continue to move up throughout your career, you have to continually ask yourself, well, what is the opportunity to do something different in this situation than what's been done before? And how is that really going to help you continue to advance? And how's that going to stick out on your resume? And who are those people around you that are going to continue to help you learn at each and every step in your career that are going to help you be able to get to that end goal down the line?
Yeah, for me it was, like what you said, your strategy might change in 2 years. So did I know I was going to bop around the country and come back, start my own company and then come back to sports? No, I could have never game planned that at all. But what I will say is when I first got into sports, I really just fell into it. And I worked, because it wasn't for the paycheck, I worked for the referral from my boss, like the reference. And that was kind of my light at the end of the tunnel early on in my career was, and I will say moving on in my career, it's a small industry, they all are, but most of the jobs I've gotten, I barely even had to interview for because I was working for that reference. And it was my boss calling somebody and saying, hey, you really should hire Scott. So on the long nights and working weekends, I knew in the back of my mind, I'm doing this for my future. So I would say that. And then the other thing when it comes to strategy, I used to say this to myself, I worked for one team for 7 years, so I was kind of getting the itch of, maybe I could go be the president of a baseball team or something like that. But who you surround yourself with, as other people said, and the organization you're with, sometimes I think, I'm a vice president or a director at a team that does a real good job and I'm surrounded by high-level people, that can sometimes be more meaningful to your career, I feel, than going to take a general manager role when it's a one-person office, or just who you surround yourself with. So I would say those two things, work for the references down the line, be mindful of the organization you're with, and are you surrounded with people that are making you better?
I take sort of a two-pronged approach. Obviously, I want to grow my career, I want to climb the ladder, so to speak, at every level, right? But at the same time, I also want to make the most of the opportunities I have while I'm here. I think too often in this business, and I know because I get resumes all the time from kids who've been in a place for 6 months, and they already think they're ready to make the next step, and then they're not. You can't tangibly say you were successful in a job in 4 months. One season, I really don't believe that. Because I'm going to year 4 at Seton Hall, and there's still things that I want to do that I haven't done yet. That it's taken us 4 years to get to the point where we can do those things. So the first thing I look at is, how can I set myself up for the next thing where I'm at right now? What steps can I take right now so that when I go to the next job, it's not just a title for me, I'm adequately prepared for that position. But at the same time, there's a personal approach too. Obviously when I grow my career, at the same time, I want to get better at things personally. I tend that if I set personal goals for myself, I want to be better at this, I want to be better at time management, I want to be better at my interpersonal relationships, and if I work on those things just as hard as I work on my career and where I'm looking to go, those things benefit my career. If I'm a better overall time manager in my personal life, then more than likely it's going to translate in my career. If I'm better at my interpersonal family relationships, then it's probably going to translate better into my career. It'll teach me how to understand things a little bit better. So that's sort of how I look at it. How can I use my current job, get ready for my next job, not just as a stepping stone? Well, I got this title, so that means the next step is going to be this title. How do I get truly ready for that next position? And then on top of that, how can I personally grow so that ultimately will affect my career?
It's kind of interesting. I went back to consult at the Indians a few years ago, and they put me in charge of a whole bunch of departments when they were looking for new leaders for those departments. And one of the departments, one of the 4 departments I took over was group sales. Had a kid that came right from an inside sales program. Was a group account executive. Was promised by his manager that he was leadership material, and that within a year he should have a leadership position. And so he came, and after 4 months just absolutely drove me up a wall that he deserved the position, one of the positions that was open. And to your point, he hadn't done anything to prove it yet. Sports is a numbers game. It's all about what have you done. It's great to try and get a position, but have you even achieved what the goals are set? If you haven't achieved the goals, how can you ask for a position, right? So it took a lot of getting through to him that he hadn't achieved his goal yet, and he wasn't going to that year if he kept concentrating on moving up instead of the job at hand. By year 1.5, he moved on. His former boss moved somewhere and promised him he would get it, so he moved on, took the inside sales job manager, and he was just very proud of himself. This is where I belong, I'm a leader. He anticipated he would move up to group sales director within a year, again promised, and it's been 5 years and he's just now being considered. So he had to prove something first, and the point I want to make with this, and I want to talk to you guys about, is more often than not, we get enamored with titles. Titles are a dime a dozen. They're just a title. At the end of the day, they are a title. They're nice to have, but they're a title. And so what matters is what you put into that title, what you're doing with your career, with your life. So I look at it this way. Most often, you are already doing the job before you ever get the title. So can you give us some examples of doing that? I know I should have. Can you give us some examples of doing that?
Yeah, so I've been at the Storm for 5 years, and my title when I started was the senior marketing manager. And I really don't do anything different from when I started to where I am now, and now I'm the senior director. So I've always been like the only one in the marketing department with the oversight of my team, and then over the course of time, improved numbers. You hit those single gate revenue numbers. You're helping group sales hit their numbers, memberships increase, and then management looks at you like, okay, let's give them a bump, give them another bump. So it does take time to build up. And I came from Portland State, where I was the assistant athletic director for marketing. And in my head, I was like, well, I don't understand why I'm senior marketing manager when I was an assistant AD. But you've got to put in the work and prove it to get the title that hopefully you want.
I would say I was previously the senior manager of inside sales for the Sacramento Kings prior to transitioning to director of ticket sales for the Colorado Rapids. And it was that last year in Sacramento that really prepared me for my next job, and going through and building campaigns, designing partial plans, season ticket campaigns, and doing the job that you're going to move into, and proving that you can do do it. And one thing we talk about all the time with our staff is you don't just want that next job, you want to be prepared to go in and dominate that next job. So making sure that we have developmental plans for all of our account executives to get experience in management training during that last year before they want to make that transition, and making sure they're familiar with the processes you have to go through for that. And from the management side, making sure you get more experience outside of your direct department before you're moving on to that director role. So you're not only ready for it because you did your current job really well, but you have more expertise on the other things that it's going to take to really go in and hit the ground running to dominate that next role.
Yeah, I think the key along those lines of that story is, take pride in the work. I mean, it's work, it's not title. And to enjoy what you're doing and be a problem solver. So specifically for me, I had the opportunity when I was in Bakersfield, and my old team was talking about going back, but I saw so many opportunities in my current team that we could just get better. And at that point, I had nothing to lose because I had another job offer. So I went to talk to my boss, and I was like, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but the reporting's kind of off. We don't know how many season ticket, I'm a numbers guy, season ticket holders we have. We're skipping sales trainings. We need to do them every weekly basis. And he was like, okay, how about you stay and do all that? And my title didn't even change, but it was, that was a pivot point for my career. I was able to start doing all that. But I didn't go in there and say that to him because I was wanting my title to change. I went in there and said that because I cared about the team and what we were doing and everybody getting better. I saw opportunity for us to be better. So, like you said, titles will come. Maybe an analogy of, when I go through my weight loss program, stepping on the scale is your title, but it's daily eating right, exercising. That's what leads to the weight loss, for example. So I see very many similarities in. If somebody's so focused on the title, what's my title going to be next year, they're missing the point, and that's the daily work, and that's who succeeds in careers.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that I can't see progress if I only have one data point. If I, for example, use weight loss for example. If you step on a scale and I'm at 300, well, I'm at 300. There's people out there that are fatter than me, so I guess I'm okay. No, it doesn't. There needs to be progress, right? So I'm not going to hire you if you had 1 year. My numbers were good, okay, but what would they be the year after? So like you said, focus on the day-to-day work. My job hasn't changed that much from Liberty. I just have one less boss on top of me, basically, and I oversee 3 people. And the only real difference between my last job and this one is I deal with reps, our customer service reps, a lot more, and that's something that you can't. The title doesn't prepare you for the day-to-day work. It really doesn't. The title doesn't mean you're qualified.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. If you're a manager of people, you're a psychologist, you're a babysitter, you're a sociologist, you're putting out day-to-day fires. I could just keep jumping ladders, but if I didn't spend 6 years at Liberty overseeing reps and seeing everything over the course of 6 years, I wouldn't have been qualified for this job. It took me 6 years to understand the day-to-day of what it took to make something like that work and to see everything. The example we use all the time is when I worked in Raleigh baseball, we had a player that got moved from second to third base, and it took a whole year to figure it out because I'm seeing different balls every day. I'm seeing a hit that I didn't have before, and so I had that job before, but when I got here the first year, I had to take some of those that I didn't necessarily have before. That's the biggest thing, is especially if you're overseeing people, it takes time to learn the skills and the attributes, and just because you were in that role and you were a sales rep doesn't mean that you're qualified to be a manager of other people. It takes a certain skill set to be able to do that. It takes time, learning how that whole process goes down, like I said, understanding people.
I'll probably be jumping all over because I tend to do that because my brain goes in different directions. But one of the things I can't encourage you enough is part of your strategy. When things aren't going well, don't go to your boss and say, "What do I do?" Or "This happened, what do I do?" Have a plan. Even if it's not the right plan, have a plan. I can't stress that enough. I don't know about you guys, but I look for employees that don't come with problems. They come with problems with a potential solution. If it's not the right one, I'll help you work through it. But I'd rather you use your brain and have a potential solution. So think about times, if you're working now a job, how many times have you gone to your boss and said, "Well, this is stupid, this isn't working, what should we do?" Instead, here's what I would do, I think I would do, am I on the right track? With that in mind, we tend to, some places, sometimes you move people up, and this is in any industry, you move people up purely based on results and not based on the overall talent, to your point that you were mentioning, Joe. And by doing that, you put somebody in a position, for instance, say sales. You put them in a position that, yeah, they had really high totals, and you moved them up to a leader, but you still want them to sell, so they're getting very frustrated because people are asking them questions, they can't focus on the sales, and they don't know how to lead. And there's no strategy, there's no plan to put them into place to help them. And what happens is you have a very frustrated employee then and a very frustrated department. On the other side, you have an employee who feels they're owed the position because they've been there, and this is my next logical move, why don't I get it? What do you respond to that? What do you look for when you're moving someone up?
Well, I don't work in sales, but
In any area.
yeah, and what we do, so I guess at the Storm we have, so myself and then a videographer, graphic designer, digital media producer, etc. We're a pretty small department, so everyone has to be, you have to have multiple skill set to work for the Storm because we just don't have a big enough team to have people really focused on one area. So we really look for people who, when we hire them, do they have a skill set, but also are they a fit? And if they're a cultural fit to us and we're a cultural fit to them, and they already are going to have, that leadership ability and that ability to continue to do their skill set in whatever position they're in. But the biggest example I can take from Kathy, what you're trying to say is in coaching, like I'm not going to make someone a captain of my team just because they have like a great skill set. They have to have that skill set, but then also be a great person who can lead and be able to manage both of them. So you might be really good at skills and be one of the top people, but if they don't have that natural ability to lead a team and to be able to problem solve and be solution oriented, then they're not going to get that leadership position.
I think one of the undervalued things in our industry is the desire to stay as a really high-level sales rep for a long time. I feel oftentimes people that are very high-level sellers see that their managers, their directors, their VPs made the jump at this time period, and they're like, oh, that's the natural next progression for me, where I think there's certainly a ton of value in the sports industry in being a top-level seller and recognizing that, hey, I'm a great sales rep, I love doing this, and I bring a ton of value to the organization through selling, because players don't always make the best coaches. So selling and managing are two completely different skills. So making sure that you're moving people into management roles that have leadership ability and people that really genuinely care about mentoring, training, developing others, because when you become a leader, as I said earlier, it's about managing the emotions of your team and motivating and developing them and putting that first. Where a lot of times your great sellers are people that are just really great at managing themselves and are super competitive and great at what they do. And those are not always the same skill set, so making sure that the people that you're moving into management roles, one, they're doing it for the right reasons because they care about other people, and that's where they're going to get value out of their next role.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, and part of that comes with, I think, being a little bit self-aware of your skills and what you possess. Because I 100% agree, and I've seen it firsthand. The guy who used to work for me, one of my good friends, was hands down our best ticket salesperson. He was a machine and wanted to get into corporate sales because the sports world told him, oh, when you get into corporate, that's a promotion and you're better. And I was like, I don't think you're going to be good at this, but I'll let you try. And yeah, it just wasn't for him. He hated doing proposals and grinded himself out. Then he got into a management role, and he was texting me when I left, like, man, babysitting the staff sucks. And I'm like, yeah, it is not your personality. So he's now with the same team, and he's so much happier. He's just back to sales and crushing it. So I think for him, he had to go through it. He probably could have saved himself a couple of years of pain of just being self-aware of, I'm a ticket sales machine, and I'm very valuable in my job right now. So my main point would be just to be self-aware, and with that self-awareness, if you do want to lead a sales team and that's a giant goal of yours, well, you need to be self-aware of that can be a different skill set, and do you possess those skills, and if you don't, go train yourself, go make yourself better in preparation for going down that line?
I look a lot, especially if it's a management position, I look a lot at temperament. Mainly because in our line of work, you deal with a lot of wins and losses on the playing field, the court, whatever it is that you do. And you're not always going to hit your numbers. You're not always going to have the success you want. But I'm looking for someone who's going to be able to sort of stay the course, not get too high, not get too low. And so a lot of times when I'm hiring, I might not necessarily be hiring the person who has the best overall numbers, or be the person. I'm looking for the person that's going to have the temperament to coach people through problems, and to also understand the dynamics of the business that we're going to do. A couple years ago, we were in a dilemma. We had 2 graduate assistants. One was more qualified. She was slightly better at her job necessarily, but nobody liked working with her. Nobody liked her, and we couldn't promote her to a role that oversaw those people because they wouldn't respect her. They wouldn't work for her, and it wasn't them. It was her attitude. And so we hired somebody who she wasn't half bad at, but we hired another person in that position who was slightly less qualified, but had the temperament to take that job over overseeing people in a management capacity that they would respect, and that was coachable. We knew that was another problem. We knew we wouldn't necessarily be able to coach her up. We would coach up this person. And so, from a management perspective, I'm always looking for somebody who's coachable, who has a temperament for the job, sees big picture. That's always big too. And somebody that wants to, like you said, the coaches, the best players won't necessarily always make the best coaches. It's absolutely true. So I'm just looking for someone who's coachable, who understands our process and wants to see through the vision of where we're at. And that doesn't happen in 6 months or 8 months. It happens over the course of 2 to 3 years. And so that's something that I value, is someone who's ready to buy into the vision and help formulate the vision. One of the things I'm most proud of is when I was at Liberty, I look back and I go back to the office, and my boss will talk to the old employees, and she'll say, that was a joke thing. That was a joke thing. This was a Seth thing. This was a Ryan thing. And so looking back at those things that I'm most proud of, those are the things I want somebody taking over that role to want to say, okay, well, that's good. How can I be better? How can I improve on this process? And so that's really what I'm looking for, is the temperament and the coachability and the desire to want to improve.
I think that's a very good point. Being coachable is huge. You have to, all our careers, I don't care if you're president or general manager of the team, or if you're newly coming in, we all need to learn to be coachable, because we don't know it all, believe it or not. We really don't know it all. If we were, every sports facility would be making tons of money, and everything would be sold out, and everything would be rosy, and it's not. So we are all still learning, but if you realize that and continue that path, that I'm still going to learn, you're going to be golden. Some people seem to move positions yearly. They just want to move fast, and so they want to move up that way. So they just move every year. It's like another job. What are your thoughts on that?
Don't do that. I think you need to, you have to be able to prove yourself, and I don't think you can get anything done really in 12 months. Or at least that's not sustainable for a long-term, career growth in sports. I think you got to give yourself at least 2 years when you're first starting. 1 year, you need 6 months to figure out if you actually like the place, and then 6 months to figure out how you can make a difference. And then hopefully in year 2 you can make, help start implementing some ideas after you've learned what is going on in that organization that you can improve or give suggestions for improvement. I think any career starting out, you need to give it at least 2 years, at least in my experience, and then every step of the way, try to add a year, because people are looking for loyalty. But you can't change something. If you're going in and you're going to be a director of marketing, say, at the University of Washington, you're not going to change and make a name for yourself in 1 year. Right? Think about all the things you have to do to go change there. You're going to change the game experience, increase ticket sales, and, overhaul the cheer and dance program. You're not going to do that in 1 year. You're going to need 3, 4, 5 years to do all that and make a name for yourself while you're building a team along the way.
I have made that move at one point in my career, so I have been one of those people. I think the big thing we always talk about from a sales standpoint is making sure that if you're making that move that quickly, that's an opportunity that's coming to you and not an opportunity you're seeking out, and one that you're talking to your network about, and making sure that this is an opportunity that sets you up long term, and that next opportunity can help provide more learning experience, growth opportunities for you than what we can currently do. I don't think it's too uncommon for somebody in a sales role from being an inside sales rep to going to another team, or somebody within a first-time management opportunity that really goes in and does really well and then has an opportunity to take on more at another team at a time that may be only a year down the line. But I agree in terms of when you're at a director level, you don't make changes that you want to make in a year. It takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years to be able to really implement, build culture, build the team that you want, and really see the fruits of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think I've had friends who've hopped around a bit, and I was like, wow. And I think, like you said, it's the motivation behind it. So if you're great at sales, people are going to come to you and poach you, and that's kind of like you're good at your job. So I can definitely see that happening. And I would question, though, if I see a resume like that, I'm like, does this person go to work, or do they just serve teamwork online all day? Because then you're not, and be honest with yourself, you're not committed to where you're at if you're searching for another job. So I've hopped around lately, but in my career early on, I was at a place for 7 years because I was so focused on the day-to-day work that needed to get done, I didn't have time to look for other jobs. So, and then the other point I would make to that is there comes a point when either you're a director or you're in a sales role, relationships. I mean, we're in a relationship business. Humans are relationship based, and hopping around, the one thing when I moved some teams within a year or two, the thing that hurt me was the relationships I had either with staff, clients, and I'm like, man, I'm leaving these people. So when I look back to the 7 years I spent in Bakersfield, California, those were relationships that took 3 years to build almost. So if you're hopping around too much, there has to come some point in your career where you give yourself time to form relationships and see if you're good at it, to empower either sales relationships or with your staff or staff above you, because then you may be, wow, we love this person, we know they have the temperament to be good. Those relationships will help you get promoted where you're at. So,
and as you mentioned, if you are great at inside sales and 8 months another team comes to you and they're offering you more money, and it's a good cultural fit, you'd be crazy not to take that opportunity, right? So it's not a one size fits all. But like I said, if you're on teamwork online all the time, just look for the next job. How good are you at your current job? You know, are you taking the time and putting in the time and the resources to do the right thing? And like I said, relationships are key. Every job I've ever had is because I had a relationship with somebody. And I know people in this business who I worked with who I thought were really good at their job, but didn't build relationships, and it doesn't happen right now. That next job might not be, but at some point it stalls because you haven't put in the time to develop those relationships with people. Like I said, it didn't happen year one. There was a couple of stretches where she was ahead of everybody else. But then it got to a point where it stopped, and it's because those relationships aren't there. Every job I've ever had, especially in this business, is because I took the time to get to know somebody, either a mentor or one of my previous bosses or somebody that knew somebody who could vouch for me. And the other thing is, before you make the jump, and if you're in a place where the culture's bad, you don't like it, get out of there. Get out of that place as fast as you possibly can. You know that's not good. Even if it's only been 4 or 5 months, if you're in there and you know that it's not a good fit for you professionally, personally, bye, see ya, go find the other job. Now, at the same time, if that happens 5, 6 times in a row, probably you. But the other thing that I always recommend people do, and I've done this before too, is if you do see an opportunity online, I like to go find out and sort of stalking. I like to find out who was in that job before and how long they were there. Because there's been job opportunities where I was like, man, that looks like a really good job. I think I'd like to take that. And then I'll go and I'll look, and that job is turned over every single year. Every single year. And to be honest, at that point, it looks like it's the company, it's not the person. If they can't hold somebody for more than a year, that's something to think about. So I recommend that as well. I mean, obviously, cultural fit is huge, but at the same time, do your due diligence on that next job to find out if it's a place you want to work. Try to talk to people there. Like I said, do some research for the person that had the job that you're going for, and like I said, do some homework on your own to make sure that it's a fit. It's a fit for you as well.
You know, I am leading on to that. Another question that I didn't put on here. Getting into sports and starting your sports career or moving up to that next level. How do you evaluate the pros and cons of the position? You know, we get too excited sometimes with who wants us, where we might have a job versus we're not really weighing it. A lot of people don't want to leave their little hometown, which is nice, but there's only so many jobs in your hometown. Sports is a mobile profession. The only way you grow is experiencing other things. So how do you weigh pros and cons?
I'll just take you through my brief sports career. So I started at the University of Montana, went to school there, got a job as assistant marketing director right out of college, so natural fit, worked for my alma mater. Was awesome, just kind of dream scenario that I fell into. And then after 2 seasons there, I had an opportunity to go to Portland State University as their director of marketing, also a rival in the same conference in the Big Sky. And at that point, I evaluated bigger market, getting out of a small college town, going to, the big city of Montana. But then just the opportunity there to develop my own professional path and all the different skill set I know, similar conference, so I kind of knew what I was getting into, but in a total different scenario, going from a traditional college campus to an urban institution, a lot more challenges there. And I figured that if I could be successful at Portland State University, then I could probably do anything. So I took that job, and then 5 years at Portland State, was kind of poached by the Seattle Storm. Again, evaluated, decided that I've done everything I could possibly do at Portland State to make them the best I could, and then came up here to just try it all over again and see if I could further push myself, develop it, grow. Again, a challenge for me. I've always kind of taken the challenge rather than maybe like a job where I knew it would be successful. So urban institution, and then working in the WNBA. And if anyone tells you selling or marketing in the WNBA is easy, they're lying to you. So it's very hard to do, and you have to have a dedicated staff around you and people who are really invested in selling more than basketball and really putting women's sports at the forefront of people's mind. It's not hard to do, but the great thing about our staff is we have 25 full-time people who are invested in growing the game of women's basketball, and all kind of pushing forward this mission to sort of people can come see like Sue Bird and Breanna Stewart and inspire that next generation of young women athletes to be the best they can be.
You do notice he never once mentioned he left for the title. Did he? He never once mentioned it. He evaluated based on where it was going to grow his career, but he never moved because of the title.
Yeah, and a lot of it, and for me with the Storm, it's not really even about basketball. Though we won a championship, which was amazing, an amazing experience. We started there when we were awful, for the worst team in the league 2 years in a row, and then we developed. But our whole staff kind of grew together with our team on the business side, and then all of a sudden, year 5, a lot of us started that same off season, and then winning a championship together makes it all worth it.
I think certainly the first one is always the opportunity to go in and make something your own in any place that you're going. But then also as you're evaluating it, making sure that that opportunity and your vision of what you want to do and how you believe you're going to have to go about achieving that opportunity matches the rest of the organization. Not only your direct boss, but also talking to the higher level executives and making sure that, hey, when you're going in somewhere and you have a vision for how you want to go about taking advantage of this opportunity, that it matches. I think when I went to Colorado, the one thing that was evident throughout the interview process was that we were going to be a culture of training development. We were going to continue to innovate within the space, and we weren't comfortable with where we were at. So that matched very clearly with what we want to do from a people standpoint in terms of finding great people, training, developing, but also looking at our ticket sales business and saying, how can we keep innovating in this space? How can we change the way we sell and think about how we're doing things differently to work smarter each and every day? So you want to make sure your vision of what you want to do within your department or your current role matches with that the executives and your direct boss? And also, what is the history of the people that have been in the role prior to you? Are they people that are continuing to move up within the organization? Because we all want to go somewhere where we can continue moving up within that organization. We're very fortunate at Kroenke Sports Entertainment to have many different properties within Denver. Being able to see a history of growth for people that were in that role at the Rapids to move up within the organization was a huge positive. And then lastly is just that you're going to be surrounded by people that continue to challenge you. And not only people above you that are going to be your direct boss, but meeting your peers on your own team and making sure that they're people that are going to keep helping you grow each and every day. Because we learn just as much from the people that work beside us, whether it's inside sales reps, those of you that go out and take inside sales jobs, you're going to have those contacts throughout the rest of your career. They're going to become some of your best friends in this industry. When you get to an AE level, it's the people that are continuing to push you each and every day. So when you're a manager, director, put those other people in those roles across the organization that you're going to be working with on a daily basis that continue to help you be a better person and a better professional each and every day.
Yeah, I think, well, it can change with life as well. So when I've evaluated opportunities, it's a lot different than when I evaluated them 15 years ago. But it started out, to echo what everybody is saying, when I took my big career, first job, went from Idaho to Bakersfield, California, which few people would choose to move there just for the landscape. It's funny, this sounds like a small thing, but the president of that team oversaw 3 teams, and I had met him at a conference, and he was just a goofy, normal person. And I was like, whoa, that guy oversees 3 teams, and he seems like a real good person. So that was a big part of when I tried to tell him, no, I'm not moving to Bakersfield, California, but the more conversations we had, it was somebody I knew could further me as a person and be a mentor. And he really is now a mentor for me in my sports career. And then as you progress, things can change. Family, getting back closer to home, and those are all choices we have to make because it is a very mobile business now. I will say as hinted on my little bio there, I've taken one job for the money, and it was the worst 6 months of my life. So it was very eye-opening to me. In Bakersfield, a place that, again, the city itself, I wouldn't choose to make my forever home there, but the office and the culture, I was excited to go to work. And then, I won't name specific teams, but living in Austin, which is a sweet town, I had anxiety getting out of bed every morning, and I was like, what is going on? This has never been me. So that was one thing I learned I will never do again. I would rather be challenged with good people for free than deal with that.
That's a really good point to bring up, and that leads me to pay. It's kind of been all over the map. I think the reality of sports is, especially when you start, you don't get paid big bucks that the players get. You have to remember that. Players get paid big bucks. People in the offices do not. There is a huge discrepancy there. You need to realize that. You're not going to get millions. But, is it sustainable? Yes. But I've had a lot of questions from kids that are entering their first sports job, and they'll contact me and they'll say, is this reasonable? Is this not reasonable? I look at it and say, okay, you have to pay a student loan, probably have a car payment, probably have car insurance. Can you sustain it? Can you sustain it for a year to get through this, to get to your next level? Can you survive? Those are things you have to look at. But when people want to move up in their career, it seems like the first thing they jump on is the pay difference. I've been asked tons of times, I'm getting my second job in sports and it's across the country, and they're not going to pay my moving expenses. Well, you know what? They probably won't. Not until you get higher up in the hierarchy. You don't necessarily get moving expenses paid. So how do you position it? What do you look for when you're promoting people? Or you're even starting people, how do you look at the pay scale? How do you come up with a decision of what is a logical jump in pay or what is feasible in the market?
HR tells me no. So I just hired two new staff, and we kind of look at what is the kind of market value for that position that we're hiring, like across Seattle, in the sports world. We are pretty low compared to, most organizations in Seattle, but we're also don't bring as much revenue in, et cetera. But we try to make sure our employees are taken care of so that, they're not stressing about money every day when they're coming to work, and that they feel like they're appreciated and taken care of from the standpoint that they should have at least a livable wage, and aren't, stressing about what they're eating for lunch every day. I don't know, it's different. Our sales staff is incentivized, our marketing team isn't. So they start a little higher than the sales team, but I think we do a pretty good job of keeping them. We also start them at a level where they can grow. So within the organization itself, so you do have growth opportunity within our organization from where you start, which I think is helpful as well.
I think that one really comes back to what you're doing in your current job. We always talk to our staff about when you do your current job in a really excellent manner, you're going to get opportunities that come to you, and those are the opportunities where if you're really wanting to make that next step, they're going to be willing to do what it takes to get you to their organization. So making sure that you're not seeking out jobs, but you're doing your current job in a manner that people know who you are, know the job you're doing, and they want to come get you to work for them. And those are going to be opportunities where I think you can accelerate your earning potential more, rather than applying for jobs and making the next step that way.
When it comes to pay, like we pay, I would say entry level, we look at what's standard, and I know it's low, but as a manager, I know there's room for growth, and if you excel in that first year, I want to give you a raise, and I want to show you progression. On a personal level, it can be tricky. My first year in Bakersfield, I referenced that they wanted me to do game ops for an AF2 team, a arena football team. We took over, flew me to Chicago, flew back, mainly because they had nobody to do it. And so my boss was like, awesome, you'll do game ops and you're the corporate sales guy. And I was like, cool, I'm thinking like $3,000 raise for that. And he was like, nah, you're just doing it for the experience. And I was like, well, I respectfully pass. I don't. And then he was like, okay, I'll pay you. But I did it in a way of, it wasn't personal. It was just like, I'm just presenting you a plan. And that's kind of what, Kathy, you said earlier. So there were multiple times in my career that I've gotten raises that I came in with a whole one-sheeter of why I think this is fair and what's going on. One time my pay had gone backwards $10,000 because of 2008 things started crashing. I was losing corporate sponsors. I felt I was still working hard and doing a good job. And I went to lunch with my boss, and he circled, I'll give you that salary. And it was like a $20,000 raise on my salary because he was like, I get where you're coming from. Like you've sacrificed for the team. You're doing a good job. You came with a plan. Let's do that. And I was like, holy cow, that worked out great. But I've also worked with people that went in and asked for like a $50,000 raise. Like they were oblivious to the reality of the business. And so being aware of your worth and putting it into a real conversation and have a plan with your boss, I think can show growth. And I will say in minor league sports, from the manager side, it can be tricky. One of my good friends who worked for me was going to go work for the Raiders. So we offered him a sizable raise to stay, and he was like offended by the raise. And being his friend, I was like, well, what is going on? You're like pissed off me offering you a raise right now. And he's like, well, I had to come threaten to leave to get that raise. And I kind of understood where he was coming from, but the conversation was, well, if we're working a fine line here on budgets in minor league sports, so if we think you're happy, it's hard for us to say, okay, I'll give you $20,000 more next year, until you are faced with, is this person valuable to the company? So I think the way to avoid that is to, yearly have an honest conversation with your boss. Let them know where you're at. Because as a manager, I do want to know if you're like, I stare at my paycheck every time and I'm miserable. I might leave tomorrow. If you're a good employee, I don't want you to leave tomorrow. And I want to have an honest conversation with you of like, hey, I have to work within budgets, but here's what we can do, and here's a game plan for you.
My first job in sports, I went into debt. I had to. It was a minor league baseball game. It didn't pay very well. I paid the bills, so I lost a couple grand. I was willing to eat a couple grand of money, take that job. I wouldn't do that again. Don't do that. Don't do that. Look, if you have to go to work for a team and you feel like that wage is not livable, and they don't appreciate you, they're not going to appreciate you once you're in. They don't appreciate you beforehand. They're certainly not going to appreciate you once you're in the job. So don't do that. If you have to work outside of sports for 6 months till that opportunity comes that is sustainable and is good for you, do that instead. Don't take, I really need that job. I need to get my foot in the door. If you have to go into debt to take a job, that's not a job. So don't do that. The other thing is, I've been on the other side where I felt like, I got offered a job, was ready to take that job, then my boss came back and said, we found a pay raise for you. Well, why did I have to come? Why wasn't my work effort good enough for you just to give that to me? But that also happened, it was part of my fault. I never had that conversation with my boss. I never went to them asking for it. And if I did ask for it, I would have gotten it. So it was a two-way street there. I wasn't willing to ask, I was afraid to ask, and since I wasn't asking, they weren't going to pay me any more money. So those are all factors to keep in mind. But make sure that you're getting a living wage and that you can work in sports that haven't worked for jobs.
I'm a huge strategy person. It never takes strength. I just test that's my first strength, and I just have to have plans. Have to have a plan in place, and of course, you're going to deviate from that plan sooner or later. It's not written in concrete, but it's living and breathable. So what I encourage you all to do, either if you're in sports and looking for your next position, or whether you're starting in sports, is put together your plan. Don't just shoot arrows all over and hope to land something. What is your plan? You've met with a lot of people today during the day. A lot of people gave different ideas to you of how to go after that first job. Maybe not just waiting for it to come to you. I mean, I don't know anybody that knocks on your door and says, we want you. How can I go outside of my comfort zone to try and get a position? Who can I network with? Put a plan together. Put a plan together. I'm going to accomplish this over the next month. The next 2 months, I want to accomplish this. What do you have accomplished? Put it in writing, and it keeps you going. It keeps you focused. A lot of you that I know we've been meeting with are graduating, and you're like, we don't have a job yet, we're getting nervous. What are you doing to get there? You have homework every night as well as you do every day. So if you want to move in the sports industry, you're always going to have a plan. When I do sales trainings around the league, one of the things I teach is a full day of strategy. What is your plan? Don't just hope to get the numbers in. What is the plan? And I work with them on their plans, because when you get into, every one of these people here, when you get into their roles, they have to write strategy, do you not? You have to write your strategic plans. It needs to start now with you guys, just starting out, or whether you're already in the industry looking to move up. You have to start with a plan, and you need to learn to start writing your plans. When you get up into a position where you're moving up, it's going to be much easier when they tell you write the strategy for the department. You can be able to do it because you've already been doing it. You've already been this thoughtful process. That's what it takes to get you going. I'm going to open it we got a couple minutes left. Does anyone have any, we have 2 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Come on, we're not that good. What's your questions? Yes?
I always ask this question. So I'm Timmy Foster. I'm a doctoral student at Northeastern University in organizational sports leadership. My research is on exploring organizations and projects that partner with athletes for social justice causes. And so I'm always interested, and I know I've talked to some of them talked about it as well already, but I'm always interested in maybe some work or projects that you all are doing to engage athletes and that has an impact on students. So we talked a little bit about that. And then, of course, big shout out to Seattle Storm champions, WNBA champions for the country. So thank you on that as well.
I think some of you answered that this morning, but those that didn't, is there anything your organization is doing with your athletes that addresses social concerns?
Yeah, we at Seton Hall we're big, just like every school is, with the rape culture that seems to be prevalent on our campuses. So we've done a lot of stuff, especially in the last couple of weeks, working with our student athletes to identify that. It can be really, it's very complicated on campuses in general. Now imagine if that's happening within a team structure. And so we've been doing a lot with that and telling them and identifying how to handle those things. But we've done a lot of work last year of empowering our students to make better decisions and to make sure they understand what their rights are if they're ever in a situation where they feel like they need to report something to campus authorities. Hope that helps.
It's time. Okay, it's time. Okay, thank you again, and hopefully you've all learned something today. Have we learned something today?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good thing. All right, thank you.
Were you